This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief here on Blood Red with me, Kai Delaney. I'm joined by Matt Addison. It's Liverpool 2, RB Leipzig 0 in the Champions League round of 16. Liverpool into the quarterfinals. It was an impressive performance, Matt. It looked for a while like it might be one of those nights in front of goal, but in the end, job done and a really impressive display from the Reds.
Yeah, all round, really impressive. Obviously, we knew that Liverpool didn't need to score tonight, but you did feel in that first half, they just had so many chances, particularly that Diogo Jota one right just before the half-time whistle that really should have put Liverpool out and completely through with 45 minutes to just relax and chill, and just didn't quite happen for them in that first half in terms of the finishing. But in terms of the overall game, I mean, it was just so much better than what we've seen of late. Defensively, they were brilliant. I'm sure we'll come to that later, obviously in the show. But just so many positives for Liverpool. And I think that the biggest thing for me, away from just the performance and simply that, it's just Liverpool fans now have got something to look forward to. The draw a week on Friday, it suddenly feels like there's something to play for. There's really something to get your teeth stuck into between now and then, and you can just sit back and watch the rest of the Champions League matches next week and just relax and know that Liverpool are in the hat. We know the Premier League has not gone to plan. It's not gone the way that anybody thought it would have done this season, but I think the performance, the fact that they've got through so emphatically, it just breathes a bit more life into the last couple of months of this season for Liverpool.
We were just talking off air before we got started then, and obviously a comment on screen from Andy now. Fabinho not only back into the team, but more importantly back into midfield. It's almost a different team when he's back in his number 6 role, isn't it?
I thought he was absolutely magnificent. I mean, to come back into the team, I know it's his natural position, but he's not played there since October the 17th in that Merseyside derby. That's a long time to be away from your natural position, and to just come back in and slot straight in as if he'd been playing there for the entire time, I think is a huge compliment to the player that he is. He didn't need any time to bed back in or settle, and it's always the sign of a good player, isn't it? We always say it about Van Dijk, whoever's alongside him, he makes them better. And I think you can say the same with Fabinho there. I don't think it's a coincidence that Thiago Alcantara suddenly looks like the player that Liverpool thought they were going to get and thought that they would have alongside Fabinho this season. I thought he was absolutely magnificent as well for as long as he was on the pitch. So, yeah, a huge positive for Liverpool. I think for me to be fully convinced that you stick with Fabinho in midfield, I think we've got to see it in the Premier League. I think Leipzig kind of played, well, definitely did play into Liverpool's hands quite a lot in terms of the way that they set up and went about the game. I think, you'd like to see Fabinho and Thiago together against, I don't know, I know Liverpool have played West Brom, but, a West Brom or a team like that who's going to sit in and defend and see what happens then. I think certainly we would see a better Liverpool team than what we've seen over the last few weeks, and it is sort of time to try that. But I think, yeah, it was certainly a positive, but I think you've got to sort of see that midfield against maybe a team that plays in a different way for me to be fully convinced that that's now just a case of Fabinho's back in midfield and won't play in defence again. I think it's still something to think about going forward. But yeah, in terms of Liverpool's Champions League chances, if they can get Fabinho in that midfield, they can get Kabak and Phillips playing as well as what they did tonight. It's only ever going to be a good thing.
You've touched on the partnership there, Fabinho back into midfield, kind of bringing the best out of Thiago. Thiago has come into some criticism this season. Obviously, Liverpool's form hasn't been great, but Thiago maybe not delivered what fans expected when he was signed from Bayern Munich in the summer. You can see why he's given a bit more of a license with Fabinho there, and the number 6 Thiago can push a little bit further forward. It's almost as if that was the position that he was signed to play back in the summer. But just why do you think, go into a little bit more, why Thiago kind of comes alive and he gets so much more from him with Fabinho on the side as well?
I mean, I think it's a few things. I think that the biggest thing for me is that Liverpool can win the ball back a little bit further up the pitch. We know that Thiago is brilliant at that sort of pass before the pass, the one that gets it into those positions quickly. And the thing that allows Thiago to get the ball into Salah and Mane, Jota as it was tonight, Firmino once he comes back, the thing that gets that ball into them quickly is to win the ball higher up the pitch. And that is exactly what Fabinho does. He's got those long legs that just stick out, nick the ball back, and then it's straight away onto the counter-attack. And Liverpool are winning the ball back in better positions. And look, if you give a player as good as Thiago Alcantara space to pick a pass, that's exactly what he'll do. And against the team who flood numbers forward and who come out and attack and try and play their way through each of the thirds like RB Leipzig do, I think Thiago is absolutely perfect for Champions League nights against these big teams, because he is one that if you win the ball back in that midfield, you give the ball to him, he will find the pass. And that's what we saw tonight. And I just think it just gives Thiago a little bit more license, rather than having to think that he is the one who's responsible for winning the ball back. That's Fabinho's job. And Fabinho is so good at it that you just trust that if Fabinho's there, that's what he'll do. You don't have to track back and cover just in case he misses it, because Fabinho doesn't miss it. He gets the ball back, recycles it, gives it to the players who are better positioned and better placed to play those balls. And I think that's what we saw tonight. So, look, that's the huge positive. As I say, that's the sort of caveat for me, is that I think in the Champions League, maybe that's where you see the best of that partnership. I wonder if in the Premier League, maybe against teams that are a bit more defensive, it's quite as obvious. But I think it's one of those you'd love to see it in the Premier League, as long as Liverpool get that stable centre-back partnership and you can trust those centre-backs as much as possible. You're never going to trust Kabak and Phillips to the same level that you trust Fabinho defensively. But if you can get them to an adequate level, I think that the option to put Fabinho in the midfield, we've seen, the percentage that he adds to the midfield is probably bigger on these sorts of occasions against these sorts of teams than it is for him to be at the back and add a percentage there. So it's just one of those where it's not a perfect situation. I think, you'd much rather have other players at centre-back, but as long as they're good enough, moving him into midfield, it can only be a good thing for Liverpool.
Yeah, as you say, one of the reasons Fabinho was able to move back into midfield tonight is maybe because Klopp is starting to trust that centre-back partnership of Phillips and Kabak that we've seen develop over the last couple of weeks. Again, it looked good tonight, a clean sheet against RB Leipzig. What did you make of them, and what do you think of the partnership going forward?
I think they both did superbly well. That's the first thing I'd say. I've not been massively convinced on either of them, and I was slightly worried when you saw Fabinho in the midfield. You wondered about the pace of Leipzig. Would they be able to exploit them? But it sort of surprised me. I think that the way that Leipzig set up almost played into Liverpool's hands. We saw it in the first leg. We saw it, I think, tonight as well a little bit, that they tended to play balls over the top. They started with Dani Olmo as a false nine in the first leg. They obviously played Yusuf Poulsen for the majority of the game in that number 9 position tonight. And I think for me, it would have made more sense to go with, Hwang and a couple of the players that came off the bench, because they're a bit more mobile. Those are the sorts of players that you'd think would be able to get the better of Phillips and Kabak. We know, the big strength of Phillips and Kabak, particularly Phillips, is in the air, winning those aerial duels. And that's what we saw them both do tonight. But I think Leipzig probably in hindsight would look back and think, well, maybe if we'd have got the ball on the floor, maybe if we'd have played it in behind, it could have been different. But look, you can only play what's in front of you. And that's what the two centre-backs did for Liverpool tonight. So I think it was really, really promising. And if they can stay fit, stay together, it's certainly, something that can only be a benefit in terms of that consistency. It seems good tonight, absolutely. Whether that will be the case in every single game, whether that's the case against, a better team with more quality, maybe in the quarterfinals, I'm not too sure. But for tonight, for Nat Phillips and Ozan Kabak, I think they deserve a lot of praise. So, yeah, all credit to them. They've come in and they've done exactly what they needed to do.
While most of the attention has been on Liverpool's centre-back issues this season, there has been some problems at the other end of late. Diogo Jota started up front alongside Mane and Salah tonight, and then the second goal was a fantastic link-up. Started with Thiago, went to Mane through to Jota, and then a great cut inside and signature finish from Salah. So it's encouraging signs from the three of them. And there's an argument that I guess with Firmino's form recently that's now Liverpool's strongest front three.
Yeah, I thought Diogo Jota was a huge positive. Sadio Mane as well. I thought they both looked a little bit rested, a little bit more rejuvenated and energetic. And obviously we know that they can finish those chances that they had in the first half a lot better than what they showed tonight. But the second half they were clinical. Mohamed Salah on 25 goals now, I think, this season, which in a season where Liverpool haven't scored a great deal of goals over the past few weeks, that's a huge positive. And I think for Sadio Mane, it's a big thing for him. You saw the massive grin on his face when he put the ball in the back of the net, just things like that. I mean, surely that gives not just Liverpool fans a lift, but it'll give his teammates a lift. They'll know that he's been going through a difficult patch. We spoke about it on Blood Red on Monday about how he'd only scored, I think, 3 goals since Virgil van Dijk got injured. I think we can't underestimate, the fact that he's put the ball in the back of the net. He's finished at a brilliant team move from Liverpool. That will surely give him confidence moving forward. And I think I read a stat over the last couple of seasons, maybe 3 seasons, that only Cristiano Ronaldo scored more goals in the Champions League knockout stages than Sadio Mane. So maybe this was the perfect stage for him to reset, really, get a bit of confidence back, look a lot more sharp. And yeah, look, it's no coincidence, I don't think, that you go back to the Thiago thing, that the best version of Thiago after a weekend where he didn't play at all for Liverpool in the Premier League. That was the first time he'd been rested in the whole of this calendar year. He'd played in every other fixture, even in the FA Cup against Aston Villa. I think we saw a rejuvenated Thiago, not just because of Fabinho, but because of that. And the knock-on effect of that is that you get more quality and more chances. And if you give enough chances to Salah, Mane, Jota, even Firmino when he comes back, I think we see a much better version of all of them. So, yeah, a huge positive, I think, for Salah to get a goal, but particularly for the other 2 members of that front 3. The confidence, the sort of just the fluidity and the work between them. I think we've seen, a much better version of each of them tonight.
And just before we get off then, we do have the post-match press conferences coming up shortly here on Blood Red. But now Liverpool through, we get to have the fortunate position of sitting back and choosing who we'd like in the next round. So we'll run through the teams that are already qualified. So Borussia Dortmund, Porto and PSG, obviously Liverpool in there, of course, the 4 teams already through. Looking at the aggregate scores from the first leg, Man City are 2-0 up against Mönchengladbach. You'd expect them to go through. Real Madrid are 1-0 up against Atalanta. Bayern Munich 4-1 up against Lazio, and then Chelsea leading 1-0 against Atletico. So is there anyone is Porto the obvious one you'd fancy in the next round?
Yeah, I think Porto is really the only one that you'd think Liverpool will be massive favourites. I know they've just knocked out Juventus, but there's enough there to make you think that they'd offer enough chances for Liverpool. We saw Juventus last night had plenty of opportunities, and Porto had to sit in and dig deep. I thought they were deserved winners, actually, Porto against Juve over the course of the 2 legs from what I've seen of it. But I think you'd have to fancy Liverpool to get through if they were to draw them. The rest of the teams, it's really, really difficult. You look at Paris Saint-Germain, you look at the other English teams, Bayern Munich, they all look really, really good at this moment in time. I think Real Madrid would be an interesting one. Obviously, it's a big name, but they played, I think, for 80 or so minutes against Atalanta. Atalanta had 10 men and only managed to score the 1 goal past them. Atalanta, we've seen Liverpool sort of brush aside already this season, so you sort of know that the quality that they have. I think the fact that Real struggled a little bit to break them down, possibly they're not quite the same force that what they have been in previous seasons. But yeah, I think certainly you'd probably pick Porto over Real Madrid, but I don't think Real Madrid would be the worst result for Liverpool to get. But look, it's out of Liverpool's hands, isn't it? The main thing is that they've got through into that draw. Whoever it is will build up to it, will look forward to it and be really, really sort of happy to move forward and hopefully Liverpool can progress in the competition. But look, the absolute minimum from tonight was that they put themselves in the hat, and whatever happens from here, it's all down to the fate and whatever numbers come out.
Exactly that. Liverpool are in the hat. Well, Liverpool through to the next round of the Champions League after 4-0 win on aggregate against RB Leipzig. We have the post-match reaction from Jurgen Klopp and Julian Nagelsmann coming up here on Blood Red, so stay with us for that. Until next time, bye for now.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.